Looks like a very nice Wednesday out there. And coming out, you're gonna hear a bunch about projects all around the borough, so I appreciate that. I'll start right off with, going down the line here, the outline, who I am, who we are as a borough, what we've been up to this past year, a little bit about the challenges that we face as a community, and then what's the perspective from the residents, side. And then talk a little bit about more abstract, like what is growth and efficiency in the borough. So right at the top, who am I? I have been a borough resident for a handful of years and I've absolutely loved it here. And I went to Penn State Borough where I earned a bachelor's of business economics, as well as an international business degree, and a master's in project management. And I'm honored to have marked 2 years as the borough manager, as of August 1st. So I'm very excited about that. Can't even get this thing to click right. Say again?
And your name is?
My name is Marcus Jacobs. So who are we as a borough? More broadly, we were established in 1912. We have a population of, just under 3,300. We have, a lot of people when I first started were saying we're a mile by a mile. That's actually not right. We're 1 mile by half a mile. So in total, we're 0.53 square miles. So we fit quite a lot into that. And we're a total of only 339 acres. We are grid network, as you can see, we're pretty filled in a nice grid pattern. And we are quite dense, being that we're half a square mile, when you figure it out with the population, we fit 6,000 people per square mile. Just so that we're comparing apples to apples on a square mile basis. We were largely developed in the 1900s, as many of us know. Many of the homes here were built early in the 1900s. And that generally means we're tight knit. We are a grid, as I mentioned. We're connected by a network of sidewalks. A lot of newer communities just don't have sidewalks. I guess don't care about those anymore, I guess. But here we have them and they're great. Also front porches, the same concept. That's a really valuable thing that we just have ingrained in who we are. We also have a traditional style Main Street business district, and it's on a historic US Route 20. So this is kind of a recipe for success here in my mind. As a borough, we are lowest form of government. Lowest, often you might look at that in a bad way, actually. You might say, oh, we're the lowest on the totem pole. The other perspective really is we're the closest and most responsive form of government to the people. And we're very accessible here. We have an office right here on Main Street, our Buffalo Road. You can call into the office, you can get in touch with people, and that's the beauty of having a local government like this. We're very responsive to the people. And we're not alone. We are one of 956 boroughs across the Commonwealth, which is pretty cool. And boroughs, just for all of you who may not know, are pretty unique to Pennsylvania. There's not many other states that have boroughs like we do here. But in Pennsylvania, any small town pretty much is a borough. That's just how it is. So what have we been up to? Some of the things, we have a 24/7 police department. And in the past year, we have promoted our officer Hairloo is now sergeant. He took the sergeant's exam and went forward with that. We also did bring on a new officer Cassidy onto the force, and that was, replacing the position of Officer Busick, who actually went to the city at the end of 2024. And then also we're in a contract year, so we have negotiations ongoing with the chief and the officers. Another very exciting thing is the Joint Municipal Steering Committee established at Florence Park. And the purpose of this is to, study and plan the potential regionalization of Lawrence Park and West England police departments. At this stage, you just need to start looking at it, exploring it, for if it could be a thing, whether, people love the idea or don't love the idea, whatever it might be, tasked with looking into this to make sure if this is a possibility that could work, we should certainly pursue it. So actually we're having very exciting. We've got our first meeting scheduled for September 4th. So finally we're getting, started. We're going to be looking at that. It's going to take a long time. There's a lot of considerations there, and we're certainly not moving. We're not going to, ram anything through. We're going to make sure that we, do this really thoroughly. In terms of the fire department, our fire department, like many volunteer fire departments, is in need of significant community support and involvement. After 100 years of service, we must keep it going. And we're seeking firefighters and EMS first responders. And then also, even if you're not gonna be running into a burning building or, administering first aid or something, there's other positions available there in the admin department or, helping with fundraising and putting on community events. So I certainly encourage you to look into getting involved in the fire department. And even if you're not directly involved, try to support their fundraisers, spread the word about the events. One exciting one that goes on every year, as we know, is the Christmas tree sale coming up. So keep an eye out for that. I'm very happy to say over the past year, we've really gained quite a lot, in terms of the relationship between the borough and the fire department. We're working well together and we're working towards, a better future, together, collaboratively. So I really like that. In terms of our public works department, the crew is continuing to maintain the borough in all, regards. Just like every year, they paint the crosswalks, sweep the roads, build the potholes, unclog the problem spots in the sewer, sprayed out the storm drains and much more. We also had many very exciting, substantial investments, in our community assets that they maintain. So an example of that would be our, borough parks. We got the Hinkler Park bathroom. This was, years in the making, and actually that predates me even. So shout out to Regina Julius over there, on getting that grant, and finally we're able to get across the finish line. The bathroom is in, it's functional, and the grass even grew around it already. So that's cool. We had a pavilion collapse over Snowmageddon last year, and we were able to get it covered by insurance. So not too bad, It's a 50-year-old pavilion. Now we got a new one. Very happy about that. And then also Morrison Park, we know, is in very rough shape, so much so that actually we had to take out all the equipment up there, it just wasn't safe any longer. And our insurance looked at it and said, this has to go. So as you know, likely it's just an empty parcel sitting up there right now, but we do have plans to get it, reconstructed into a full-blown park with a nice playground and everything. And we have a $60,000 grant from DCNR that's already been approved. We do have a $60,000 county greenways grant submitted. We're waiting on moving forward with that. And then, the community cares so much about this, and specifically the Morrison family has really, helped out a lot here, that actually $9,000 has been raised from community donations to go towards this park. So that's very exciting. And hopefully there's more news in the coming, so many months about this. In terms of the transportation office, right off the bat, we were able to secure this over the last couple of months, $530,000 for Euclid Boulevard between Station Road and Willow. And that reconstruction will be occurring in the spring 2026. And that 530 is just straight money being handed to the borough. There's no match, there's no nothing. And that should cover us for the entirety of the project scope. But isn't that crazy? 530,000 gets you, in essence, one block of Euclid, and there's 3. So it's a very, very expensive project up there. In terms of work we did complete this year, we resurfaced about a quarter of a mile. That included Riverside Drive and North Street, for a total of $137,000. So Riverside, we tried something new. We put down a new structural asphalt. It's a lot stronger. And then we seal coated on top of that. And North Street, we tried something new. We resurfaced it, even though there's concrete underneath. We resurfaced it, and then we cut the joints in so that hopefully, when the concrete would move, it wouldn't mess up the asphalt on top. So those are a couple of new things we're trying there, and hopefully that works out. But as you can see, 137,000, and it impacted 2.5% of the total road net. So it's not enough. It's not enough. But that's why we went very heavily this year into the preservation route, which includes crack filling, seal coating, and fog sealing. And we did that, a total of $95,000 this year we spent on that. But that impacted 2.3 miles. And that was 23% of our total road network. So the concept with seal coating is we're trying to preserve the good roads that we have so that they don't progressively get worse, and we can kind of buy ourselves time so that we have more time to resurface the stuff that's needed, or even some stuff like Euclid is too far gone to be resurfaced. It needs to be fully reconstructed. So, and as you can see here, just how expensive it gets. It's like preservation It's about 10 times as expensive to do resurfacing and 10 times as expensive to do reconstruction pretty much. So it's a whole different scale of expense. So very important that we continue to do that preservation method to keep our good roads good, because I do not want the list of bad roads to grow. It only makes it hard. We've also done significant ADA improvements along, throughout the course of this year. 28 total ramps have been redone for $95,000, or 28 total will be redone. We're going to be starting here in a couple of weeks with another project. But $95,000 has gone towards ADA improvements. And then also the Borough parking lot, as you might have noticed, and the Mirsky, or Representative Mirsky's office parking lots were redone. So that was a total of $35,000 between those two. So even parking lots, two relatively modest sized parking lots, $35,000. So, but it had to be done. In terms of stormwater, this one has been one pain after another. The other transportation one, we planned these projects. This just keeps popping up. So first off, we had a Fremont Street sinkhole where a misaligned joint and a concrete pipe underground ended up causing a sinkhole, pulling away all kind of sediment. So that appeared randomly on the road. It was a completely normal road one day, and then the next day it's, hey, this part seems to be going down. So we repaired that, and might have been like 6 weeks total. And that was $8,500 we didn't really anticipate. So, same kind of concept here with Pearl and Water. We have another sinkhole that just kind of popped up. Same concept. There was corroded pipe. In this case, it's a metal pipe, but it pulled all the sediment down with it, and now it created a sinkhole over top. So for $5,500 over the next, so many weeks, we're going to be getting this 25-foot band-aiding in there. And that really is just a band. 25 feet is like nothing. We're hoping that we can just fix that one spot and that the other 200 foot up to the next manhole or up to the next stormwater drain is okay. Because if that's not okay, as you can see, the cost will go up significantly. And then another kicker. The North and Wesley intersection has not one, not two, but 3 collapsing stormwater drains. They're all the 100-year-old, pretty much an 80 to 100-year-old masonry stormwater drains that are made out of bricks. So all the bricks are caving in by this point. You can see, look down into the manhole, you see bricks all over the place. So yeah, that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Probably the next meeting, I'll be asking council for money for that, because we can't get through a winter like this. But again, I say 10 to 15 there. It's definitely over 12. It's probably more like 15. And that again is just kind of popped in. So that's our stormwater situation this year. In terms of sewer, same concept. A lot of our system is 80 to 100 years old and is in need of replacement. And now we have done decent over the years with sewer, so it's probably not as bad as, let's say, stormwater. But still, there's a good amount of pipe out there that's not in good shape. Now we are beginning, as you may have seen recently up on Euclid, there's a sewer replacement project going on. So that's doing, pretty much one block from Station over to Willow. And that costs $240,000 right there. Just that one project, that one stretch. Now, thankfully, 125 of that was covered by county ARP funds. So that really helped us out. Otherwise, we would not have done that project whatsoever. But still, that goes to show $240,000 for one project. Now we have put several grants in for phase 2 Euclid, which will be the remainder of it from Willow over. And that was estimated at about $500,000. And then every so often you really want to do a video inspection to see what's up with the sewer lines. And also we need to update our maps. We're way out of date with that. We're using maps from, I think it's the 70s, some of them. So we definitely need that to be redone. And we have a grant we put in for that for, in the range of $200,000. So progress on the sewer, but it's slow and steady. In terms of the administration, we've improved our operations and processes in the borough office, trying to get more organized, better flow of things. We have stepped up our code enforcement and blight response, and we have brought on a dedicated code official to really focus on some of those problem properties here in the borough and make sure that they're being improved, or if there's some other remedy that we can work through. We've also improved our zoning process, and, made it more accessible for our residents. Now you can get more information online about our zoning. You could, do full, transactions online, do all that. So that has really made it easier. Before, when you'd have to come to the office, that was one thing. Now you can do 24/7. You can go online and file a zoning permit. So those are the little things that will make it, more effective for administering services to our residents. We've also done significant improvements to the westerville.gov site overall. And then we did transition to a new financial system this past year, which is a blessing. It is so much more effective and efficient than our old system. So I'm loving that, certainly. In terms of community engagement, I think we've had a great year over the past year. I mean, going all the way back to August of last year, the last State of the Borough I did. I mean, since then, we had the Santa in the Borough event. I think that went very well. 2025 Community Day went phenomenal, as always. National Night Out, we just had a couple of weeks ago. Thankfully, we had much better weather this year than we did last year, so that was really exciting. And then we did do the Borough Charm Awards as well, where dozens of homes were recognized by, fellow members of the community for being charming. And certainly that's not an exhaustive list. So I think we want to do that again next year. And then hopefully, we can get even more people recognized for the charming homes that are here. In terms of upcoming stuff, there is a mural fundraising, spaghetti dinner here on the 7th from noon to 3 at Borough Hall. I haven't gotten too much out yet on Facebook or Savvy Citizen, but certainly I will soon. But as you know, the fundraiser, as you may know, the mural had gone up at the community garden. It looks beautiful, very vibrant over there. But there's a little bit of a funding gap just to get it over the finish line. So, the community is coming together, the church is putting on the spaghetti dinner right here, the Borough Hall, right here in the kitchen. So we're gonna finally get use out of that new commercial kitchen that's in here. So I guess I didn't mention that on here anywhere, but yeah, that's fun. But thank God. Also, International Coastal Cleanup along Water Street is scheduled to happen on September 20th. Again, I haven't quite got the word out yet about that, but be on the lookout over the next so many weeks. That stretch of Water Street is just a crazy amount of litter, and it never really has been focused on. So really trying to tackle that and get that improved. Coming up is Halloween in the borough. That's always a big hit. So we really want to lean into that and hype that up, because again, we have sidewalks, we have front porches. That's something that a lot of communities don't have. So that's exactly the type of thing you need on Halloween, really. And then Santa in the Borough went super well last year. And again, the Christmas tree sale for the volunteer fire department. So those are the next so many things that are coming up, and keep an eye on that. And then the community day is obviously a great event that goes on, but it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. So, you want to, if you are interested in helping to plan for that, the first meeting of the committee is happening on September 3rd. So, keep that in mind. I do want to highlight, and thank you very much for coming, folks from Lawrence Park. We have several regional partnerships that we're really trying to build on. Building a stronger partnership with Lawrence Park, namely through like our quarterly joint municipal meetings. We've had now, I guess, 4 of them, right? We're coming up on the 5th, I guess. So that's really been exciting, and I'm looking forward to many more of those and getting closer with Lawrence Park. Also, joint grants that we're going out for different projects, and we talked about even regionalizing certain services. Also building out partnerships with the city of Erie. We did put together a sewer camera agreement with them already this past year. We're looking to do more with our garbage truck, so we can rent a garbage truck from them, so we don't have to delay your service. And then also other ideas like, we share Bird Drive, but there's really just been a handshake agreement about that. So getting more of a formalized maintenance plan for Bird Drive would be great. So that was everything we're up to. Now let's talk about some of the challenges we face. And this hurts, okay? This hurts. So be ready. Well, right off the bat, infrastructure liabilities, these are rough estimates. I'm still trying to get together total square yardages and better numbers and whatnot, but upwards of $5 million in 2025 dollars is needed for just our roads. And this includes, as I stated, the total project for Euclid is $1.5 million. For just the road. That doesn't include the sewer underneath it. $800,000 is estimated for Fremont. I know I get a lot of complaints about Fremont, east of station, not in very good shape and very heavily trafficked, but that's 800,000 for a full reconstruction. 300,000 for Edison, leading into Park, very not good shape. And I, just by looking at it, I can assume that that base underneath is in terrible shape. So you can't just do a simple mill and repave. That needs to be a little bit of a more extensive project. 700,000 for North Street. Those several sections of North Street have concrete underneath of it. So again, that's probably going to be a more extensive reconstruction. So right there. And then also 1.5 million for everything else, pretty much. Because I listed the big four complaints that we get, but there's a bunch more roads that also need to be reconstructed or whatnot. So that's a lot just for roads. But also when we do roads, we can't just do roads. We have to do the ADA ramps alongside it. So those are like at the corners where you have the bump pads, for people with disabilities to be able to cross. Bless you. Thank you. We painstakingly went through the process, and I have to give credit to the clerk for the help. 158 of these ramps were identified in need of upgrade all across the borough. So, look at how many intersections we have here, and most of these intersections have the ramps. And there's a good amount of ones that do not have them up to the proper code, up to ADA standards. So 158, if we estimate $4,000 a piece, which is pretty much the going rate right now, for one ramp, and there's two per corner. So one corner could be $8,000. That's $632,000 just for the ramps, which we're legally required to do when we do any construction in the borough. So when we're upgrading the stormwater drains over there, we'll have to do a couple ramps along with that. When we're doing the reconstruction on Euclid, everybody focuses on the concrete on the street, but they're not paying attention to every corner might have 8,000, 8,000, 8,000, 8,000 just for the ADA. So it's very expensive there. Stormwater drains, we already talked about, that's been a big problem. We haven't fully itemized our inventory of that, like we did with the ADA ramps. We're working on that piece to get a more, real estimate. But if we just threw out a number and said across the borough, let's estimate that we've got 50 that are in need of replacement. There's 50 stormwater drains, each one about $5,000 a piece, to drop in a new one. That's $250,000 right there. So it's one infrastructure liability after another, and it's just all collapsing around us, literally. Especially stormwater drains, like, as I said, 3 separate areas have arisen this year that we didn't anticipate. And because it's underground, it might be out of sight, out of mind, but it's gonna collapse soon, one day, and unfortunately, maybe sooner than we'd like. Sewer system, same concept here. Doing up there on Euclid was 246. That got us 0.14 miles. Let's assume, as I said, we haven't done a full cameraing yet of the lines recently, so we don't know exactly how much is needed, but I know it's a heck of a lot more than just 0.14 miles. So let's say it is 1 mile that's needed. Using this metric here, 246 for 0.14, that brings us to $1.75 million in sewer liabilities likely outstanding. So across the board, roads, ADA ramps, stormwater, sewer, whatever it might be, that adds up to $7.6 million. And this is all in 2025 terms. When I started here, which was only 2 years ago, we were using an estimate of ramps at $2,500 a piece, which was pretty safe. Now, we just got it back, it was $37,500. So almost 4,000, which is the metric I use for this. So, by the time we actually get around to many of these ramps, it might be $5,000 a ramp, $6,000. It just keeps going up. So infrastructure is obviously a very big liability. Also, we have personnel. We have personnel liability. We are operating, we are providing services to our residents. The borough needs to hire a group of public officers and public workers to serve the community. We need to today, and we will continue to need to hire, public officers and public workers long into the future when we want to continue to provide these services. If that's the case, it's an expensive endeavor to provide for them now, and it only goes up every year. Those costs increase. Just a couple examples. Even workers' comp. We want people to be working and to be, safe in that. Our premiums go up every year. Our medical insurance premiums go up every year. And actually, I've been told by our insurance person that this year in particular might be kind of rough. They're anticipating seeing the rates go up more than it did last year. And then we also have retirement pensions, and those are contracts to our employees. And every year it becomes increasingly expensive to provide the outlined benefits that we promise. And currently the borough has at least several $1 million in pension liability and other anticipated expenses and everything there. So, and again, we will continue to need to hire people. And that will go on for years to come. So, every year it gets more expensive to do that. So that was all of our liability. That's all I'll throw on you for now. It's painful, I know. But to put it in perspective from your side of things, the average assessed value of the borough is roughly 77,500. So the assessed value from the county, and this is what your taxes are based off of. So I wanted to show, a lot of people will call in and, complain to me about the taxes and everything, and hey, I hear it. On 77,000, you have $3,500 of taxes every year that you have to pay, $3,500. But of that amount, we, as the borough tax, only get $1,000. So actually, our burden, or the tax burden from us, is only 30% of your overall burden. So kind of keep that in mind. You're paying $1,000 to the tax towards the borough every year. And now, how does that get broken down here? This 1,000. So this is all the budget categories from the 2025 budget. So for general government, public safety, public works, and whatnot. And then these were the percentages of the total for those categories. And then I broke that down. So if you're paying $1,000, the way it breaks down is $400 of that goes straight to the police department, $200 to public works, only $4 to the parks. So not all that much goes to the parks, actually, all things considered. Everything in the parks really has been grants. And then, all the other insurance and employee benefits and all that stuff is $270 right there. So that's how your $1,000 gets added up. And that's what we do with it. Now I wanted to break down, because all of this was great, looking at those overall numbers, getting an idea, okay, 400 goes to the police, but I wanted to call out specific expense categories, just to say, like, these might be things we're not thinking of, but it goes to show how expensive it is. Streetlights. We pay $40,000 a year for our electric bill just for the streetlights, $40,000 a year. Traffic control devices, including stop signs and street signs, and then also the utilities for the traffic lights. Like, we have to pay the electric for the traffic lights on Buffalo Road. $16,000 right there. Road salt and plow maintenance. Our public works crew is incredibly proud of the job that they do, and I get a lot of compliments me here about the winter maintenance and how good that is to this borough. It costs $21,000 just for the road salt and the maintenance on the plow piece of equipment. It doesn't include any personnel or anything. This is no personnel, nothing. It's just the line items themselves. Line paint, literally for all the crosswalks, all the disability parking spots that we have spread out throughout the borough, $3,000 just for gallons of paint. That doesn't factor in the cost of the person doing it. Just paint is what we spend. Our annual audit is required. The best deal we can find on it, we shopped around earlier this year. We got a new auditor this year, actually. We shopped around $10,000. That's legally required. We have to do it. And then even postage. I want to throw in something that you might not think much about, but $1,700 is what we spend on postage. We have to. We send out a lot of stuff. So those numbers might be big, but I wanted to put it in perspective. And it's kind of easy because the average house spends $1,000, gives the borough $1,000 in taxes. So let's just assume that all of that $1,000 went to certain line items. It takes 40 houses just to pay for our streetlights. Takes over 16 just to pay for the traffic control devices. 21 for the maintenance of the winter maintenance. 3 houses just for the line paint. Total amount of taxes from this house, and this house, just for buckets of paint. That's all it is. And then audit 10 houses and 2 houses almost for postage. So that maybe gives you an idea. And every year the cost of providing those public services increase. Every single year when I'm putting together the budget, I get something in the mail. Oh, this is going to go up. Oh, just 5%. That's all. This is going to go up 5%. And then that too. And it gets harder and harder to provide these services, the same level of service, You know, our police officers and public workers, they deserve raises. You know, our insurance rates increase on our vehicles, on our property, as I said, on our medical insurance, our workers' comp, we need insurance. That goes up every year. Our material cost, as I mentioned, you know, it was $2,500 to do a ramp just 2 years ago. That was the same estimate. Now it's $4,000. So it just goes up and up. You know, and if we want to have local police and public works departments, and if we want our community assets like parks and streets to be maintained, we need to pay for it. And every year it becomes tougher to pay for. And really, with costs ever increasing, our best strategy is to share the burden among as many people as possible. That's the key. Share the burden among as many people as possible. So the more people we can service using the same amount of community infrastructure capacity, the better. I mean, here's the equation here. The cost of providing borough-wide services at the top, divided by the amount of households and people served. And then you get a cost burden per person or per household. And as we obviously want to limit how much we need to spend on services, and we want to be, you know, tightening our belt as best as we can, but there's some element that that's just going to go up and go up and go up over time, no matter what we do. So if we can increase the amount of people or households that we serve, then we can make sure to keep the cost burden per person at about the same level. And that's really key. Now, this equation is the same for all municipalities. You know, every municipality faces rising costs and faces mounting infrastructure and personnel liabilities. That's just the reality of operating a municipality in the environment. Now, all municipalities try to keep their costs of providing services to a minimum, and they try to maximize the amount of citizens served and maximize the amount of citizens that are paying into the system. More citizens paying in, easier it is to provide the service. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the borough specifically, growth and efficiency, kind of more abstract topics. And actually, despite having the infrastructure liabilities that we do and the personnel liabilities that we have, we're actually pretty well positioned for the future. And back to broadly what the borough is, you know, it's communities like the borough that are more efficient, you know, because of our historical character of density. You know, relative to other municipalities that aren't as dense, we are able to serve more people with less. As I said, we have 3,300 residents that we're serving on half a square mile, you know. And having the grid network means you have more people on the same road. So one road is serving more people than you have elsewhere where the houses are more spread out. You know, and if we have 3,300 people on 0.5 square miles, that means we have 6,000 per square mile. That is it's quite dense of a community. We might not even realize how much we're able to fit comfortably within the borough. And I would argue it's very comfortable. Before I knew these numbers, I wouldn't have thought that we had 6,000 residents per square mile. I wouldn't have guesstimated that, certainly. And the nice thing is, because we're the way that we are, we end up having more of a tight-knit and functional community. Community that you can actually walk around, you can walk your dog, say hello to your neighbor. It just feels different. Feels right. And this traditional style of community development has worked for thousands of years, literally thousands of years. This is how towns always were built. People clustered together and they tried to share as much resources as they could. They shared the community well. You know, they shared everything, really. So if we only have 339 acres, and this is all that we have in municipal boundaries. And as you can see, it's not like there's half of us that's empty that we can say, oh, we'll grow into or something. This is it. This is what we have. You know, we must make productive use of as much of our land area as we possibly can. And productive use, keep that in mind. What is productive locally? You know, now we've already done this in the borough. As I said, this is just our historical character. So we just need to lead by our own examples. Now, in last year's State of the Borough, I looked at the most valuable parcels and I used some data to come up with which is, you know, our most valuable. And it was, you know, surprising actually. Our most valuable commercial parcel is Yurkovich Plumbing. Most valuable commercial parcel is Yurkovich Plumbing. This one right here is JDL Computers. Yeah, that's, I know it wasn't, it's not syncing up with the picture. Terry Gensel's barbershop is another one that is extremely valuable because he's got the storefront there as well as 5 apartments in the back. It's mixed use. He uses almost all of his parcel. Yurkovich Plumbing uses like 89% of their parcel or something crazy. It's like, I mean, it's a big building. JDL Computers here. This humble little shop is one of the most valuable parcels in the borough because in 20-foot length, it fills everything and makes productive use of it. And obviously, he just celebrated 30 years as a business the other day, so that's really exciting. And he helped me get set up with the presentation screen and everything, so I appreciate that. Also, I looked at the most valuable residential parcel was a tiny house on Skelly Avenue. That was something that was not necessarily expected. You might think, okay, what's the biggest house in the borough? That's the most valuable. No, actually, this tiny little Skelly house pays more in taxes because it actually utilizes to a greater, more productive use, the tiny little parcel that it has. So that's very exciting. And we're working on certain zoning reforms that would be less restrictive to allow more of this to be built, but I won't touch on too much of that. I will say I want to look at one other historical example, and then I want to look at some growth examples in the borough. I'll leave the questions for the end. So. I've talked Sandy's ear off a ton about duplexes already, so go ahead.
Well, when you say most, like you said, you'd think the biggest house was the most productive.
Mhm.
But what you're talking about is per square foot, it's the most productive, not that little house on Skelly pays more taxes than a large home. You mean per square foot, it's the most productive.
It is, yes, given the tax assessment value of the building divided by the size of the parcel it's on. So it is a pretty average tax assessment value. It has a pretty average assessment value, but it's on an absolutely tiny parcel. So when you figure out that ratio, they pay more in taxes relative to a parcel that has the same house on a huge parcel. If you think about it, we only have 300 and something acres, 339. So we want to make sure that people are utilizing to the highest productive use their parcel. So that we can get, if they put extra houses on it, or they put more units, or they build a bigger building or whatever, that brings more taxes into us. And we want to encourage that certainly. So, yes, and I'll talk about that here. You'll see in terms of Taggart Street. The Taggart Street duplexes are incredibly valuable. And they were built in 1920 to 1927. Each unit in there, I actually used to live in this one right down here. I love this one in particular. I used to live on Taggart Street in the upstairs apartment there. And it was a very comfortable 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,100 square feet per unit. And you see 6 of them lined up there in a pretty tight knit area. But I will say, having lived there, very, very comfortable, not too close. And as you can see here, I brought up in terms of there's 6 of them. In terms of units, they have 2 apiece, so a total of 12 units. And then when you look at the amount of acreage that each unit takes, you add that up. It's a total of just over, half an acre, 0.65 acres. So, and then when you add up what their assessment value is from the county, you can get 571,000 is the assessment value, and that's being produced because we tax based off of productive capacity, and it is productive to have a duplex, to be the roof over somebody's head. That's a productive use of land. So we tax 570,000 off of only just over half an acre. When you figure that ratio out, 570 divided by that acreage, you figure out on a per acre basis how much value do we have. We have $870,000 of value almost. That's a great amount of value. If we can get that average value all across the borough, we would triple in our value. So it's huge. And as you can see, the key of this really, well, I guess let me start first in saying how much does it actually bring in taxes? So those 6 duplexes bring in a total of $7,500 of taxes almost every year. But then also garbage fees are important. And because there's 2 units in each and a total of 12, that's $3,000 just from the garbage. almost 5,000 for the sewer fund. And then also I took our average household income and I figured, okay, if there's one person living there making the average household income, how much does that come up to in income taxes per year? Got another $5,700 right there. So in total, these 6 properties are paying the borough in one way, shape, or form almost $21,000 a year. And they're doing that with 100 foot of road surface, 100 foot of sewer main. It's very easy to pick up the garbage because it's boom, 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 boom. Very easy to plow and salt because you go one pass down the road, you've hit 12 houses, you've hit 12 households have now had you plow in front of their house. And it's the same concept for the police. When the police patrol and they drive down the block, they're driving by 12 houses or 12 units right on this one little stretch. So when you factor that in, I mean, for the amount they're paying us in taxes, it's very high relative to the fact that they're using very little amount of community infrastructure. And as we already talked about, road is very expensive. Sewer is very expensive. So the more that we can get duplexes to be built or things in general to be built that utilize a very little or that, put very little amount of strain on the community infrastructure, the better. If it provides productive use of land without having, weighing us down on infrastructure, we're better off, is what it comes down to. And this is a historical example from 1920. And I have personal experience. It's great living. It's absolutely phenomenal. But what does growth look like in the borough today? Because maybe it is unrealistic, as much as I would love to imagine those taggart street duplexes being everywhere. Maybe that's unrealistic. But I wanted to look at a couple of growth examples. So on Union Avenue, we have a house that added a backyard cottage. So this was originally this front house, 1,480 square feet, built in 1920. And then in 2007, they added a second separate unit in their backyard. They were able to fit it in. And that added 1,900 square feet to their original house. So, and now a breezeway connects the two. So ultimately, they're now at 3,400 square feet. They have 2.3 times their original size. I mean, that's kind of crazy when, their parcel didn't grow. They just made more productive use of their parcel and they were able to fit more onto it. And it looks quite nice in my opinion. Nice siding and everything. And in terms of what this, pays in taxes, their taxes doubled when they did that. Doubled because they were using their land more productively. So they're paying us more, $500 more every single year because they've done this. In this particular instance, I will say, the people have chosen to live in the whole thing, so they're not renting out the back. But let's assume that they would rent out the back. Let's assume that would be the case. You would then have 2 garbage fees, 2 sewer fees. You get 2 resident income taxes. All of that means more money coming to the borough. And in particular, I have this covered right here. Yeah. But that's $1,600 additional that we bring in because this person did that every year. And that's double the revenue. Another one, there's a Borough Drive triplex that was built. This one was originally a 900 square foot home. This home right here. This looks like many houses in Westonville and many houses in the area, not particularly large, 900 square feet, built in 1923. They added 2 units in 2003 that are connected to the rear of the primary dwelling. So you can kind of see a little bit of the corner of that right here. And then on this was a screenshot from Google Earth. You can see the duplex added on the back. Or turned into a triplex. It's 2 additional units. They added 2,000 square foot to a building that was originally 900 square. So that was, by the end of it, 3.2 times its original size. 3.2 times its original size. And now this is being all rented out as apartments. So their property tax went up $350 a year. Also, instead of paying 1 garbage or 1 sewer, they're now paying 3. So the additional revenue in those funds, and then also they have 3 people living there at least paying income tax. So that's a good amount of additional revenue right there. Now, and like under the old arrangement, they were paying, let's say, $1,300 taxes. Now they're paying nearly $4,000. So, just as one example, You know, it's nearly 3 times the revenue because they turned a single family home into a triplex. When you do that, you have capacity and it's better for the community.
Looks like they have their own places to park too back.
They do. They have a nice lot back there and everything, so it's quite nice. And from the front, you wouldn't, if you drive by it probably, you might not even notice it was there. Now, I'm very excited to say we do have 2 new residential construction, residential homes going in the borough, which is the first new residential homes in, it's been decades, really. But it's up on 29th Street and they are being built by Habitat for Humanity. 2 nice, little homes up there. So very excited about that. But yeah, so that was what growth looks like in the borough. Several examples, Union Avenue, Bird Drive, and then up there in College Heights. Now, what do we ought to be doing? And this is again, pretty broad. We need to simplify and reduce regulations, which would enable more freedom to build. Many of the most beautiful homes we have here, like those duplexes I mentioned on Taggart Street, not able to build it for a variety of reasons. So zoning reforms are coming soon. I'm very excited about that. You'll hear more on there. Also, we're working to streamline administration to improve service access. As we said, getting more information on the website, getting more faster turnaround for certain processes, but especially those processes that relate to businesses coming in or development of parcels and whatnot. We want to make sure that we streamline that, make it easy for someone to bring a shed in or to bring a garage or to build a whole building in their backyard or whatever it might be. And then also we are accumulating a community inventory that tracks the available commercial and development space. Because, there are times when I have businesses calling and saying, hey, where could we open up here? Instead of being like, well, I guess that's empty there, and I guess over there is empty. It's nice to say, here's the 10 places that are empty. Here's the contact number for the people leasing it. There you go. Like, hopefully you can open up here. And it's the same concept with development. And sometimes we even ourselves think, okay, we want to build, but where would we even build? But there are more empty lots in the borough than I think we realize. And there are more big side yards or big backyards that could certainly fit homes if we kind of frame them in that way and package them and really promoted them. Also, informing the community, there's a couple key messages that we're really trying to get out into the next year. And that's, the borough's open for business. As I said, I'm gonna get together a list of all the places that are available and then really hype that up about what makes our business district pretty great. I talked about that last year. I didn't choose to get into it too much today, but there's many ingredients for our business district that actually make it phenomenal for a small business to get started here. So we really need to promote that. And then also the borough builds. We need to encourage things to be built here because again, this is a pretty great place to build. And Habitat for Humanity, I have to say, they are building up there on 29th Street. When they came in and talked with us here, they were like, wow. No offense to the city, but it is so much easier to build here than in the city because you guys don't have all these extra fees. And when we submit something, the turnaround time is like 5 days to get back to us. And it's like, wow, we can build here. That's the kind of energy we need to be putting out, letting people know that that's possible. And then activating the community. So, improvements in our borough have only ever been community driven. So really trying to hype up the community that, hey, there's a spot for you. If you like the parks, get involved in planning. If you want to, we have spots open on our planning commission or if you want to help down the main street, there's ways to do that. Or there's things like the community garden, which you can get involved in. So really promoting community-driven improvement. And everyone really has a responsibility to contribute to our collective future. We're all in this together. We're all facing the same challenges, and we're all in the same community here. And whether it's a member of a committee or you're a volunteer fire person or an event planner, your borough needs you. So certainly I encourage you to reach out, find your spot and get involved. And one last time, I want to highlight the events that are coming up here soon, including again, the mural fundraiser for the spaghetti dinner. That's just here, I guess, not this coming Sunday, but the next one. So definitely show up for that if you can. That's going to go towards the mural. And International Coastal Cleanup, Halloween in the borough is coming up, and then Christmas is right around the corner. So make sure to be involved, be engaged, and try to support these events if you can. Oh, and then Community Day. Yeah, please participate in that and help us plan that for next year. So the moral of our story is really, we face many struggles, but we have the power to embrace change and leverage it in a positive direction. We are in just as bad of a situation as everybody else is, whether they realize it or not. And that's really the key part. We are, adding up all of the road liability that we have. We're adding up all the stormwater drains, or we're trying to get an estimate for sewers. I believe there are many, many other municipalities that are in just as bad shape as we are when it comes to the infrastructure liability that's hovering over their heads. And they just might not be looking at it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And that doesn't mean they're not gonna have sinkholes open up in their roads, before long, or their roads are gonna crumble and whatever it might be. So we're just in as bad a situation as everybody else, and we're actually well positioned to do something about that. We have all the right ingredients right here. In this very room, we have the power to unlock our fullest potential. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't get through it too quick there, but I hope this was insightful and you can walk away with a fresh perspective on our government.